Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever it may be at the time that you are watching this. I am back, I guess, kind of. Wasn't really here to begin with, but you know, it's been a while since I posted a pick a card, so I'm kind of a little not in the swing of things anymore. But I wanted to do something that's inspired by the work another tarot reader on YouTube is doing. If you've found my videos, you've probably run into her videos. So I'm talking about Spiritual Social, and she does a lot of really interesting things with regards to spirituality and divination. I'm very inspired by her in general, but she especially does this series of she does different series of tarot readings that are like grouped together to help you manifest love into your life and sort of like have a clear idea of what you're asking the universe for. I am too much of a chicken to watch them because the idea of manifesting romance into my life terrifies me. But I did want to do something kind of similar. This is not going to be for manifesting purposes. It's going to be a little bit more in the kind of fantasy realm than would be ideal for manifesting, I think. But it is probably a really good fit if you're into like the reality shifting kind of side of things. I haven't gotten super into that, but I'm kind of curious about it. Or if you do a lot of lucid dreaming, this could be a really interesting thing for you. And it's also, I think, a good way to sort of like look at your life through a lens that isn't tied to specific circumstances. So something where you're looking at life through sort of like dream logic, or there's no real stakes to this. You don't have to worry about like, oh no, the Tower card, everything's going to be ruined, because it's a kind of controlled setting, but it would give you kind of a lens through which to sort of like look at where that energy might be coming into your life. The last way it might be useful or interesting is just in practicing discernment. I've found that pick a card readings in general are really good for learning how to listen to your intuition and see where it is you're drawn to, especially like in the beginning when you're actually picking the pile. But even just like because they're general readings, it's a good way to practice discernment and like knowing what messages are meant for you and what messages are not meant for you, even if those messages are bringing your attention to something you aren't necessarily ready to face or that you haven't had time to face. So this might be a good way of practicing discernment in another like really low stakes kind of manner, and I hope it'll be fun. I don't know yet because I haven't done any of these, but it seems like it would be fun. So this series is going to be focused on that kind of trapped in another world sort of genre of fantasy. You mostly see it in anime or in like Lord of the Rings fan fiction from back in the day. But it is a genre that I've always been really fond of, so we're gonna go ahead and test that one out. So I have flipped over the world card for each of these three decks, and we have some oracle cards underneath. I'm probably not going to do a deck credits at the end of this. I'm probably just going to list the decks I use in the description like a reasonable person. The deck credits thing hasn't really worked out for me. I don't know if I posted anything that I did that with, but it just... Okay, so we have pile 1 using the vice versa tarot, which is why I ended up flipping the world cards over for all of these, because I feel like it's... I haven't shuffled any of the tarot decks yet because I'm going to do that right before each of the readings. I take like 2 minutes to shuffle constantly, so it's not going to be on screen. But yeah. So we have the world card for the vice versa tarot, the Shadowscapes tarot, the Wild Unknown tarot, and the Divine, or the Tarot of the Divine. I always think of it as the Fairy Tale Tarot, but it's not called that. It's called the Tarot of Divine. I know there are a lot of Fairy Tale Tarots out there, but this is my first one that's actually fairy tale themed, even though I love fairy tales, so it's just the Fairy Tale Tarot in my head. So go ahead and pick your pile, and I will get started. Thank you for coming here, and I hope you find something interesting. Hey there, pile one. This will be your reading for today. So I'm going to start with the world that you're coming from. So this is going to represent sort of the key themes of, I guess, what is familiar for you, and sort of like this is what you understand our world to be about. And then I'm going to use this card to tell me about the world that you're entering and how those themes either mirror or contrast the themes that you find in this world here. And then in the middle of it, I have a card representing you. And so I guess if you find that resonating with you, if you feel like a connection to this kind of narrative, this will be your pile. If you get through all that and you're like, I don't know, I can't really relate to that, I don't think it's very interesting, then if you want, you can go pick another pile. Or like you might have a secondary pile that was sort of calling to you and you were feeling. Or this might not be the story for you, and that's fine. It'll be okay. But yeah. So just basically just these first 3 cards are to see if this is something that'll resonate for you, and if it doesn't, then that's a decision that you are entirely responsible for making, I guess. I don't know where I'm going with this. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the cards, because otherwise we'll just go around in circles all day. So for this world, I think you end up feeling this pressure to say yes to things. Even when you don't want to say yes to things, you feel like there's an expectation that you say yes to things. And so you end up saying yes and then regretting it, because it never turns out the way people assume it's going to turn out for you. Like, you're sitting there at these parties that you don't want to go to or be at, or at this interview that you don't want to be at, or in this class you don't want to be in, or talking to someone that you don't want to date, and you're like, why does everyone think this is going to turn out well? It never does. And yet, instead of like letting yourself say no to things, you just keep trying to be what the people around you want you to be. So you see our world as being about going for things and driving forward, moving forward, running, rushing, just doing everything so fast and so unhesitatingly, and you're just kind of like, why am I even doing this? Why am I even here? Like, there's no purpose to it. You just keep rushing and going places you don't really want to go, but you never really have a moment to sit down and kind of like look at things from the perspective of what you want. It's always what people tell you you should want. And so you just end up like kind of stuck and feeling like none of it has any worth. And the world that you are going to find yourself trapped in for this story is, because that's the genre, not because like you're going to be stuck in this world forever kind of thing. There will be points where like you're not really trapped. You can say no to anything in this whole series, even if there even is a series, because I am classically not good at finishing things. But like, you can, to this at least, you can say no at any time. I want you to know that. And if you say no and then change your mind and come back, it's a video on YouTube. You can totally do that. But the world that you're going to find yourself invited to, and then kind of stuck in, and then eventually coming to terms with, because this is a story, is referred to, or is the Forge Don't Follow, is the card. And then this card is Jump In, obviously. I don't know why I said that. But, so you're being called to a world where instead of just saying yes to things and mindlessly going into things and just like going for it, whatever the prize is, because it's the prize, not because you want it, you are being asked to create your own path, to know what you want and follow that instead of what everyone is pushing you towards. Maybe they all think that the prize that's being offered for first place here is fantastic, and that's great for them. But if it's not something you want, it won't make you happy, and they can't, like, no amount of pressure from other people will make things matter to you if they don't matter to you. What matters to you is something that your heart knows and your spirit knows, and you are being called to a world where you learn to value what your heart is telling you rather than what everyone else is telling you. And I did peek at the oracle cards a little bit. When I'm setting these up, I draw the cards that I'm using for your signifiers and everything, and then I write them down in case I need to, because I write them down so they don't get lost. So I did peek a little, and that's why this flows so well, I'm sure. But you're kind of indecisive. You try not to be. You try not to let it show. You try to be very on top of things, but at the end of the day, you don't really know what you should be doing. You don't really know what you want to be doing. You don't really know, like, with the people around you, I think you don't really even know if you want those people around you. You might identify as an introvert, but I do think it goes a little deeper than this. I think one of the major problems you have in your life is that your boundaries are constantly being violated by people who claim to love you. And so you don't really know how to say no to them. You don't really know how to set boundaries anymore because they've been worn down so much. But you also have come to a place where you sort of associate love with being violated, and it just sort of makes you feel like, what is even the point of any of it anymore, right? Like, why should you bother chasing after all of this if you just don't even have a choice? That's not fair to you. And that matters. Like, so I started therapy, and one of the things in my therapy stuff that we are going over is boundaries, and I got like this handout from my therapist about like boundaries, and it makes a point of being like, good people set boundaries, generous people set boundaries, because this setting boundaries allows you to be good and allows you to be generous more effectively. But like, even without it being good to set boundaries for other people, it's also like, it doesn't need to be good for other people. It just needs to be good for you. So, I don't know what you're going through right now, but it seems like it's kind of wearing you out. So I'm gonna move on to like more about the world that you're gonna end up in here, and see if maybe we can, at the very least, find a story for you to relax into, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how to call it. So where's my lesson plan? It's not really a lesson plan, but here's my outline. There we go. So the first card I'm going to draw is for how you arrive in this other world, and we have Justice in Reverse. So I think Justice in Reverse kind of makes me think of crime. And I'm not going to say that you commit a crime and are like exiled to another world, but maybe that's what happens, is like, maybe, so you know how sometimes in novels where like, well, maybe not novels, but like stories where there's a secret magical world alongside our mundane world, and all of the normal people don't know about it. Only a select few with magic powers know about this magical world. Like in the Shadowhunters. And so I think you are just like a complete innocent person. You don't know about any of this magical world nonsense, and then you break one of these magical rules and get punished as though as though you did know about this stupid magical world. And so they exile you by sending you to a completely different world. And you're in magical prison, but magical prison looks like a fantasy universe. So they just kind of like yeet you through a portal and call it a day, and you're just like, man, I didn't know any laws. I didn't know I was breaking laws. I didn't know I was doing something wrong. No one told me. How was I supposed to know? But you know how in those weird magical worlds, they don't really care about the non-magical people not knowing the rules. They just go at it. I'm also kind of thinking of Baldur's Gate Shadows of where you arrive in a new country, duking it out with a wizard who kidnapped you, and then they have the gall to arrest your sister because she used magic against the wizard that was already attacking you, as though you had any idea that magic was illegal. Like, come on. So it's sort of like that situation where you didn't know you were doing something that people thought was wrong, but they punished you anyway and yeeted you to another world. So now you're trapped in this other world, and we're gonna look at exactly how you're stuck. Oh, are these positioned properly? Good. I forgot to check my view on the camera because I don't have a whole lot of space to work with. If I zoom it out more, then I'm not gonna have a clear focus on the cards. So I don't know how to use my phone camera. So what's keeping you trapped in this other world is the Seven of Cups. Oh, and then I just noticed that the Justice card in reverse is also from behind, so that kind of like adds to that like otherworld feel. So there's like secret rules that were broken that you didn't know about, but you got punished anyway. Ten of Cups in reverse, and then the King of Cups, or King of Wands in reversed. So here I'm seeing that you're stuck in this world largely because you don't really know how to get back. But there is someone in this world who is preventing you from finding a way back, and you don't really get along with this person. They might be a guy, they might just be very domineering with the King of Wands in reverse, but they are very much they want to control you because they want to have control of something. Now, don't they? And so it's really hard to get along with someone like that. And I think with the Ten of Cups in reverse, you keep trying to go through this person to get back. Because you think that you can, like, persuade them. If you just prove that you're good enough, you can convince them to let you go back home. If you just prove your innocence to this person. But they don't really care. They're not really concerned with right or wrong. I mean, the Justice card over here is in reverse. And this person is probably associated with the same people who yeeted you into this other world. If he's not associated with the same people who yeeted you into this other world, then quite possibly you got to this other world and genuinely committed crimes. Like maybe you got to this other world and you didn't have anywhere to stay or like anything to eat or something like that, and maybe you like slipped a bread loaf into your pocket and then the guards hunted you down and the king was like, off with her head. Or his head, or their head, and you got punished again. You're just getting punished. Throughout this whole journey, it seems like you were just constantly running into the wrong side of the law, and you're like, I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know how this backfired on me so drastically. I didn't mean to do anything wrong. I'm just trying to survive, and the thing is, nobody is moved by that. Nobody is really, like, sympathetic. They're all like, well, too bad. That's how the world works. You should have thought about that before you tried making anything better. Now, shouldn't you have? And you're like, but what else am I supposed to do? I need to survive. I need to eat. I need to have somewhere to sleep. You might also... Another possibility is that if you are committing crimes in this new world that you've been exiled to for crimes that you didn't commit, you might have kind of ended up in a position where you're sort of associating with a rough and tumble crowd and vying for authority over this rough and tumble crowd, and just like trying to survive in this group is what's really keeping you from being able to find your way back, because you just don't have time to figure out how to traverse worlds when you've already traversed to this world, although you didn't actually do that yourself. And so you might be running into this kind of situation where, like, you've been adopted by some sort of crime family, and the boss doesn't like you, but you don't have anywhere else to go. And this really is a recurring theme for you, is like you have to say yes to things in our world because people are pushing you to say yes all the time. And like they don't listen when you say no. But here in this world, because you're the only one who's looking out for you. And so you really need to like push your way forward and decide what you need to do for yourself without regard to like what's best for other people. It's sort of a place where you really need to focus on what's best for yourself. And so until you're able to do that, until you're able to like have the power to say yes on your terms or no on your terms, you can't get back to our world where you'll be saying yes on everyone else's terms. If that makes sense. So, and that actually is echoed in how you will eventually be able to leave this world, being the Strength card. And that is also being seen from behind. And so really developing that inner strength and that ability to like look at this other force, this other temptation, and say like, no, this is what's right for me, and so this is what I'm going to do, is really the key to being able to come back to this world and have grown from this experience rather than being pushed around so much. You really don't deserve to be pushed around this much. I don't know what kind of situations you are in, but you are allowed to say no to things. You really are. I just really want to emphasize this so much. I keep coming back to this feeling of like, you deserve to be able to say no to people. And even if you say no too late, it's still valid. It's still a valid no. It doesn't like get disqualified because you were saying yes before. So I do want to use tarot a little bit to look at the world, but and see what kind of world we have here that you are being, because it is a fantasy world, so we should do some exploration. And so I'm going to draw 3 more cards to sort of represent the, let me make sure they're all in view, fantasy world you are in. And we have the Hierophant. The Four of Cups. And the Fool in reverse. So I think it might be kind of like, especially going on with that idea that you've been yeeted to this world. I keep saying yeeted and I should say yoked. Or actually I should stop using internet slang. But you've been thrown into this world as like exile, or like as like a world-sized prison. I do think with the Hierophant and the actually with all 3 of these cards I just drew, I think it's kind of like an island prison. Like, you know how way back in the day they just threw prisoners onto Australia and called it good? Like, you committed crimes, we're sending you to Australia. And it's kind of like that. So with this Four of Cups card, I do get the sense that it's sort of like an island, somewhere where like there's a lot of water and a lot of beaches, and not really a whole lot of connection. You have to get anywhere you want to go by boat, so you're kind of stranded on this island. There's more out there, but you aren't able to go explore any of that. You're trapped on this one tiny segment. With the Fool in reverse, I feel like you can't really get out there very much. Travel is very limited in this world, and this world is very hierarchical. So there's very strict castes of people, and there's very strict social rules, and there's very like the church has all the power. Whatever kind of religion is there, like the religious sector has all the power. And if you go against these religious people, they will make an example of you in a way that is definitely not condoned by the religious teachings. But that's what class structures do for you, isn't it? You don't have to follow the teachings if you have power. So, to recap really quick before we get into like this last bit, I see you ending up in this. So what I'm seeing happening is you are going about your daily life, and maybe you said yes to another stupid thing that you don't want to say yes to, and something catches your attention. Like maybe someone is about to cross the road and the cars are still like there and the light's still green and they're not really paying attention, so you just like go to get them out of the way, but or something, like, you know, something where you're just trying to do good, really, and you're just trying to like do the right thing. But instead of doing the right thing, it turns out that you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have stopped this person from crossing the road because you aren't supposed to touch them and you're cursed now. Or you shouldn't have tried giving money to this poor homeless person that you passed by, because it turns out that that specific homeless person was actually like some sort of magical reinforcer in disguise, and now it looks like you were passing drugs. Or something really absurd like that. Like you thought you were doing the right thing, and then it turns out that someone decided arbitrarily that you were doing the wrong thing, and now you're being yeeted to this magical island in another world where everything is very strict, and if you mess up even a little bit, you get punished more. And you don't know the rules of this new world, so you end up kind of involved with like the troublemakers and the seedy sorts, and you're sort of vying for power over like maybe a gang. Are you becoming a gang leader in this? Maybe you're becoming a gang leader in this. I don't know. But you're stuck here until you can figure out how to get that kind of power that you need to get back home, because you need to be able to take care of yourself long enough to figure out how to get home. And then even when you figure out how to get home, you're probably going to need to like figure out like how to get the manpower to get home. Like it's probably not going to be easy. So yeah, so that's where you're at when you have a glimpse of your star-crossed lover, because I have promised a star-crossed lover, so we are going to get to that in this first chapter. And your star-crossed lover is represented by not a clock, time. So yours was not a swing choice, but theirs is a clock and time. And the first thing that pops into my head is like a literal clockmaker, because you are in an imaginary world, and I mean clockmakers exist in our world too, but it's a lot more likely for a clockmaker to get involved with some legal activity in an imaginary world than it is in our world. So, but also there's someone who is kind of implacable. Like you're over here like indecisive and like, man, I don't know, I just want to do what everyone thinks I should be doing, and they're over here like, I have made up my mind. I'm not going to explain myself. I'm not going to tell anyone what decision I have made. I'm just going to do it, and if anyone tries to stop me, sucks to be them. They don't really seem particularly bothered by the pace everyone else is moving at. They will do their own thing without really even seeming to think about it. Like, it's so unquestioning. They just sort of, they do what they do. And then in terms of, they also, since it's a fantasy world, they might be immortal. I do want to throw that out there. They might be immortal because time in fantasy worlds tends to be associated with people who are either really, 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 really old or just flat out immortal. So I want to throw that out there, especially because for the next two cards we have like kind of the role they play in this world. So this card kind of is their version of this card, and then this card is sort of like the role that they would play in our world. So it's their version of this card. And so I'm seeing them as someone who is very much unconcerned with the practicalities of life. They're here to create things. They make pretty music, or they paint beautiful pictures, or they make absolutely exquisite clock creatures that just like wander around, and they don't really need anyone else's approval. But they might also be like, maybe they actually are Apollo, but like fantasyized. And in our world, it's not good to get involved with Apollo though, because he's an idiot, a lovable idiot, but still don't get involved with Apollo. And then like underneath this sort of carefree creativity and like this artsy, careless, I do what I want kind of persona, they also are very much like restorative. I think you probably meet them and you realize that they have this ability to make you feel like everything is gonna be okay. They are not reliable, but they make you feel like you don't need to rely on anyone else. And I think that kind of is what opens the door for you to sort of be able to be like, I can make decisions for myself. I don't need to earn other people's approval and have them take care of me in return. I can just make decisions for myself because everything's going to be okay. And so like maybe you meet them when they're like playing music for, I keep going back to music because we do have this lyre here, but they could be doing something else. Maybe they have like an art exhibition, or maybe they're like a graffiti artist or something. I'm pretty sure this world has graffiti. It has everything else. It might as well have graffiti. And so maybe you come across this person tagging something or whatever, and they just like, they make you see the world in a different light, and you're just like, wow, actually, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can get back home safe and sound and everything's going to be okay. But more than that, maybe I can be a little bit like them, or maybe I can be a little bit more like me. It's sort of like the seed that they kind of plant. And so this last card I have is from the Soul Connection Oracle deck by Saint Soleil / Etrubrita. It's a really beautiful deck. And it's going to represent sort of their first impression of you. And we have for you, your spirit is all around. So I think they kind of know about you before you two meet. They're the ones putting themselves out there and creating music and graffiti art and beautiful paintings and clockwork creatures and whatever else they might be creating. But you have a reputation by the time you meet this person. They've been seeing the effect you have on this world, because I think that like through it all, like you've felt up until the point when you meet them, you felt like you haven't had any power, but they've been seeing traces that you leave behind. They've been seeing like people that you've helped, or evildoers that you've punished, or whatever kind of effect you have on the world. They've been seeing, like, since you're involved with some sort of criminal gang here, maybe you broke into a house or something, and they see it in the news later, and it's hilarious how it played out eventually, and they just are like, oh my god, that's so funny. I can't believe they stole so-and-so's family jewels and then dumped them in the fountain. So-and-so's totally had that coming. But like they've seen like a little bit of your escapades, they've seen how you affect people, and they're just kind of already impressed. They're like, so you're the one who's been doing all of this. I've been here for like 1,000 years, and it's just been the same old, day in, day out. I'm impressed. Like, just right out the bat, they are impressed. Not by your ability to say yes to what they want, not by your ability to do what they want you to do, but like by what you've been up to on your own. Like, they're just kind of like, huh, this is someone to watch out for. So I think you'll be seeing more of them, not just in the sense that they're the star-crossed lover of the rest of this uh, series, but even if I don't finish this series, it's sort of like we're leaving on a note where they're like, I'll be around. I'm going to be keeping an eye on you. And if they are writing music and singing ballads and stuff, they will totally write you a ballad. They already have it in the works. They could sing you the first verse right when they meet you. So I think that's about what I have for you. I hope it was entertaining, and wherever you are, I hope you have a really good night. Thank you so much for listening to all of this, and I hope you have... I already said to have a wonderful night, but I do hope you have a wonderful night, and thank you again for your time. Take care. Hey there, Pile 2. This is going to be a reading today. So, for the first 3 cards that we go over, it's just going to be kind of like more centered on you and sort of like how you see the world and how you see this fantasy world that you're going to go into. And it's sort of about what you do and don't resonate with. So if you find that you go through these 3 cards and you're like, that doesn't really seem interesting to me, then you can do whatever you want to do from there. You can pick another pile if you want, or if you want to not watch the video entirely, that's fine. But this is just so that you don't... Exotero does it. It's so you don't spend the whole reading going like, man, when is it going to get good? This is just the confirmation of whether or not the pile is for you or not. So this card is going to be you, and sort of like how you exist in general, regardless of what world you're in. This is going to be how you see our current everyday world, and then this card is going to be sort of like the first glimpse of the world that you're ending up in. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually start with the world cards. So for this card, as being how you see this world, I think you kind of find it empty. The void is empty. That's just what it is. You see this world and you're like, nothing happens here, nothing interesting happens here, nothing matters here. I'm just not really... You don't really connect with the world as it is. You don't really connect with the real life around you. You just kind of see it as hollow and meaningless, and you kind of like feel like you're being asked to find enjoyment where there is no enjoyment. You feel like you're being asked to accept something that's fundamentally alien to you and fundamentally flawed to you, and it's just exhausting. You don't like dealing with it. You don't want to deal with it. And you feel like that's all there is just this emptiness. And you just kind of are done with it. You don't want anything to do with it. You don't want to be part of this. You just want to like find something that's meaningful somewhere. One little thing. That's all it would take. One little bit of color. And this world that you're about to enter in this reading is the opposite of that. It's like everything that I feel like you already kind of escaped to other worlds in your own head a lot. And this world is sort of like the culmination of all of that. All of your escapist fantasies, all of your like... It's like a fairy tale world, which actually, when I divide the piles, I end up like looking at the oracle cards that I draw for each pile so that I have something to focus on when I shuffle the tarot cards, and I like write them down so they don't get lost. So you have this fairy tale mindset, and the card that I drew for your star-crossed lover that you'll see later on actually always reminds me of Alice in Wonderland. And when I was looking at this card, I was thinking Neverland, and it's just like this is your fairy tale world that you're about to be trapped in. You're going to be sort of stuck in a world that is so completely everything that our world is missing, and you're just like, you don't even really want to leave it. You don't feel trapped at all. You feel like this is where you're meant to be. But like, we're riffing off a genre. We're riffing off a genre here, so there is sort of an element of if you did choose to go back home, you wouldn't be able to from this. So we'll cover that when we get to the tarot cards. But for right now, what we have is that like you find our ordinary everyday world to be empty and meaningless, and then this other world that you're being called to is just like so full of life and vibrancy and everything that's good. Sorry. And you don't even really want to leave it. Like, you're fine being trapped there. You could be trapped there for 1,000,000 years and you'd be okay. And so for your card here, we have Not a Cloud Fluidity, and it sort of makes me think that you're kind of a daydreamer. Like I said before, when I was, you've already, like I said, you already have escaped to other worlds in your head. Like, you spend a lot of time, like, thinking about how things could be if only there was, like, magic or sword fights or, you know, all this interesting and exciting stuff that happens in stories, and, like, life would be just so much more interesting to you if it was a little bit more like what's in your head, but it's not. And so you kind of like drift between like the real world and like this escapist fantasy. And quite frankly, you feel like it's unfair when people expect you to not have an escapist fantasy all in your head all the time, 100%. Like, it's unfair that everyone expects you to just exist in reality when reality is so boring. I mean, you might dislike reality for other reasons. It might not just be because it's boring. It might be because you've had kind of a hard time of it, but it's easier to say because it's boring. So that's what we say. But yeah. You're down for this other world, so let's go ahead and figure out like what's going to go down here. So first, the first card I'm going to draw is going to represent how you ended up stuck here. And we have the Knight of Pentacles. And that makes it seem like you almost got here on purpose. Like, you worked at it. Like, you found some sort of spellbook or something. And in that spellbook was like this portal to another dimension. And you were like, ha, I'm going to just try it out. And then like something weird happened. And you were like, maybe if I try it again, I can actually get it to go somewhere. And you were really curious and you wanted to know, and so you like kept at it. It didn't happen right away though, because the Knight of Pentacles is sort of slow moving and like indicates a decent amount of effort. Maybe you found this book as like a young kid, so like you've had this secret in your heart for like a really long time and you just finally reached that point where you can perfect it. Or maybe another thing that could happen is like if you're writing a story or something, maybe the story kind of comes to life and you like end up falling into your own like novel or your own painting or something. And so you end up like, on some level, you've built this world. On some level, you made this happen. So you have a certain amount of control here that the last pile did not have. You are making this happen. You were like, yeah, I chose to be here. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here on my own. I got here myself, and you can't make me leave unless I choose to leave. But actually, you will end up finding that you can't leave on a whim. So let's see how you got stuck here. And we have the Star, Ten of Pentacles, and the Five of Swords in reverse. So I think in addition to this being a world where you might have created things, or else a world that you got there very purposefully, you're connected to this world like lineage wise. Like you come to this world and you are immediately expected to take up some sort of like legacy. Maybe you come to this world and it turns out you're the long lost royal heir, and so you're expected to rule over this kingdom. And it might not be a very wise set of expectations because you are a complete outsider, but like there's this hope that you can make this world even better. And there's also a sense of like you're stuck here because you don't want to let other people down. And so when like the rose coloring comes off of your lenses and you finally start seeing things as like, well, I do kind of feel homesick, or well, I really do want to get back to where I was, you realize that you don't really know how to go about just leaving people like this. So I think even though this world seems so beautiful on the surface, there are a lot of like conflicts that need to be resolved. Like there's just some deep societal issues that you feel like you can solve if you work hard enough at it. And you actually really care about working hard enough here. Now that you've come home, you want to fix things. You want to make things better for the other people who live here. You can't just pack up and go when it's convenient for you. And so you have this sense of responsibility that you never had before, and you want to live up to it. And so you can't leave until that's resolved. You can't. And so when you are finally ready to leave, what needs to happen in order to allow that is the Four of Swords in reverse. And so I think when you do leave this world, it's going to be because you realize what kind of responsibilities you've left behind in our world. And so, when you get to this world, you are escaping all of the mundanity of like real life and all of the like little details that you don't really want to care about. But you get to this world and it's perfect in every way except for like you start realizing there's a lot in this world that kind of reminds you of our world and kind of makes you wonder like if there's stuff that you should be doing to fix our worlds too. And so I think when you finally leave this world, it's because you realize like what you can do in our world to make things better, and like what you can do in our world to bring like the lessons that you learned from this world. Like you go to this world and you inherit all of this responsibility and all of this power and all of this like work, I guess, but it's like it's not work that you would just be handed to in our world. It's like serious stuff, serious responsibilities, and you learn how to navigate that, you learn how to handle it, and then like once you are able to do what you can for this world and come back to our world, it's because you know from living in this world for a while how to apply that responsibility, the responsibilities that you had in this world. You know how to like apply that to making our world better. And so with the Four of Swords in reverse, I definitely think that like there's not really any rest for you. Once you enter this world, there's no sense of rest. You are inundated with like things you need to do, and it feels good at first because it feels like in our world you didn't have anything to do, you didn't have anything to care about, and so you get to this world and you're finally able to stretch your legs and do things, and you're finally not irrelevant. You finally matter. And so when you get back to our world, you take that mattering with you, and you take that like sense of responsibility and that sense that you can make change with you, and you're able to start transforming our world. But you're not going to get there until you've resolved whatever issue it is you need to resolve for this world, because this world gave you a purpose and you are going to fulfill that purpose. Like you are not going to let them down. So I'm gonna draw a little bit for what kind of world you're in. And we have the Ace of Wands in reverse. And I want to make sure it's on camera properly because I don't have a very big view screen. the Seven of Swords, and the Ace of Cups in reverse. Yeah, so even though this world seems like super amazing on the surface level, or like your first impression of it is like, oh my god, I can't believe this place is amazing. It's definitely the kind of place where it's like a glossy exterior hiding like a rotten underbelly. So I feel like you come to this world, you get all this power, and then you start realizing like it's so messed up actually. Like it's really unfair. People have to freaking struggle in order to get by, and you start realizing like how lucky you are for what you have. Um Not just in this world but in our world. Like obviously sometimes in our world you are legitimately unlucky. And so I'm not saying like you're ungrateful and that's why nothing matters to you here or something like that. But like from this world, you go to this world where it's so amazing and wonderful on the surface, and then you start realizing like the little things that you do take for granted and the little things that you are really glad that you don't have to live without. And you start like, man, thank God I have indoor plumbing. Or I can't believe no one here has microwaves. It's awful. Like just even little day-to-day conveniences like that. Like you start being a little bit like, man, sometimes the ability to go out after dark is nice because there's a curfew here and it's ridiculous. And like I think maybe even like in regards to the power and responsibility that you inherit when you get here, you find out the limitations of that pretty damn fast. Like you get there and they're like, "You are a long lost royal heir," but then also you can't go anywhere without a bodyguard, and not even to like the bathroom. And uh you have like a poison taster for all your food, and like it's all designed to protect you, but it feels very limiting. And you start thinking like, man, at least back home I don't have to deal with someone waiting while I relieve myself, or like putting me to bed at 9 o'clock every night on the dot. Like at least I don't have to let someone decide my bedtime, or like monitor my phone, or you know, like this world is very lush and beautiful, but there's not really a lot of freedom. And all of that lushness and that beauty, I guess. I don't know why I said it beautifulness. Anyway, all of that wonder is very much filtered to the top and then left there. And so like once you get past that, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And you start realizing how much things have to change. And also like as you get towards the bottom of this world, you start seeing more and more of like all the things about our world that tick you off, or like make you sad, or like that you don't want to engage with. And so that's why you don't engage with our world at all. And you start thinking like, but it has so much potential. And because we have two aces here and they're both in reverse, but there's still aces. And you're just like, there is so much that this could be. And you want to bring that out. And I think that's the first time that you've ever really felt like you could. And so that's why you're so dedicated to, when you get to this world, you're so dedicated to like creating a better world here. And yeah, because you're a dreamer. And the reason you're a dreamer is because you have hope and you have this idealism, and you haven't ever been able to put it into practice. But this world inspires you to try. And once you start trying, you start realizing that you can do it. Whatever you want to paint our world with, you can do that. And I think this world is going to be sort of like the first time you get to kind of spread your wings and make a difference. So to recap, before I get into like the little bit about your star-crossed lover that we're going to do in this spread, because this one is more about like the world that you travel to, but this, I promised a star-crossed lover, so we are going to meet them a little bit. So you find yourself in our world as like you're a dreamer and you have all these like beautiful ideas in your head and these beautiful visions and this beautiful stories you want to tell, but there's no room for it in our world, and you find our world to be meaningless without being able to express those dreams. And so when you get the chance to go to another world, quite literally, you take it. Even though it takes a lot of work, even though it's like a lot of effort, you go for it. And you get there and you're amazed at how much better it is. Oh, whoops, I just bumped the whole table. How much better it is than it even was in your head. And you are not only like, you're not only traveling to this other world, but you actually are a part of it. Like you inherit some sort of responsibility or power, and you start using it to make things better for this world. Because at the end of the day, I think that's really what you want, is you want to be able to make the world better in general. And in this world, you have the ability to do it. And so you make this world better because you see all the potential in it. And you want to do your best by this world that has just accepted you without question. But it does have this dark side that you want to fix before you can come back. And so you can't return to our world until you've done that. You will not stand for it. So on to the next little segment of this reading. We have your star-crossed lover for this story, and they are represented by Not a Race, Rush. And like I said, it reminds me of Alice in Wonderland, because you know that scene in Alice in Wonderland where it's like you have the dodo bird. I think that's a dodo bird. It looks like an ostrich, but I think it's supposed to be a dodo bird, and a jackalope, and like all these fantasy creatures running around. And there's like a dodo bird in Alice in Wonderland who's orchestrating this race around and around and around in a circle that they're not getting anywhere. But I feel like, I started explaining that analogy and then I like dropped it. But basically this reminds me of Alice in Wonderland because of that one scene where they're just going around in circles and Alice is like, "Why are you running?" And the dodo's like, "To dry off, of course." Which I mean, I guess. But I feel like the person who you kind of connect with the most in this world is someone sort of like Enjolras from Enjolras? I don't say his name right, from Les Miserables, where they're very passionate about fixing things. They want to make everything better, and they definitely do not have time for romance. And they're more in love with this world than you are even, and you're just like, wow. Wow, their passion and their they're amazing. Oh my god. And they really kind of introduce you to like all of the terrible parts of this world. They're sort of like your guide into how messed up things are, and like they reveal to you how much needs to change, but they are already like well on their way to fixing things. Like they have plans, they have ideas, they have like a little brigade of people who are helping them transform this world, and you're just like at first you kind of are just following along. Like they're like, "Hey, you're the crown heir. There's this problem we have, and you can help us fix it by doing this thing." And you're like, "Okay, I'll do that thing." And so like they kind of show you the ropes for how to transform the world. And you are just inspired by them, I guess, to do things, to change things. And so for a little bit more about their world. So this world card kind of echoes, like this is how they see their world in the same way this is how you see our world. And then this is how they would see our world or interact with our world in the same way this is how you see and interact with their world. So we have Realm of the Trees, Spiritual Mastery and Remembrance. and Archangel Sandalphon anchoring. And so I think when you talk about our world, they listen very raptly. Like they're as passionate about, or like they idealize our world as much as you idealize their world. And like they kind of change your view on our world. Sorry, I'm coughing again. They kind of change your view on your view on our world, like because they love all the things that you take for granted, like all the things that you're like, ah, yeah, cars, ugh. They pollute the world so badly, and we hate them. But like they get you places, and they're like, you have something where you can traverse like this huge area of land in like less than a day, and it would take us weeks to do that. That's amazing. They're very optimistic about our world because they don't have to live with all of the terrible things in it. In the same way you were very optimistic about their world because you don't have to live with all the terrible things in it. And so they kind of help you see our world through a new lens. And in terms of their world, I think they kind of are like a knowledge keeper of some sort. They might be part of a religious order, or they might be like some sort of record keeper. But they are, I definitely am getting more religious order vibes. Like they might be kind of like a monk or something. Or they are like part of some sort of magic occult connection between like the main aspects of civilization and like whatever is out there serving the main aspects of civilization. Like definitely this person definitely has a certain amount of responsibility that they need to provide even before they start like trying to change the world. They have other responsibilities just in like keeping things, like even in keeping the status quo, they have to do a lot of work to prevent like disaster. And so like they do that, and then they like rush to do even more, and they just like they're gonna burn themselves out at this rate. Like you see them and you're like, oh my god, they're amazing, but also they needed to take a rest. And I feel like the two of you are really good with this anchoring card here. I feel like the two of you are really good at sort of like pulling each other back from burnout. Like when you start flagging, they're like, hey, take a break, I got this. And when like you notice they start tiring themselves out, you're like, hey, we're not going to do everything all at once. We need to rest if we want to keep doing things. And you guys are really good at like counterbalancing each other. Maybe not at first though. At first you might kind of push each other to sort of do more and do more and do more, and it's just sort of kind of like as you grow to love each other, you are able to appreciate how much you do already and stuff, just because you see how much they do. And that kind of like reflects, and like as you two grow closer and like are able to rely on each other more, you're able to sort of like support each other rather than pushing each other more towards this flame. And this last card I'm going to draw is going to be a sort of just their first impression of you. And we have I surrender. So I said when I drew this card, and I kind of had a feeling that it was going to be like this. Like I said this, and then I was like, I wonder if I'm going to get like a super romantic card, and it's going to be like really weird. But like, so I said they don't have time for romance, and they're like so busy devoting themselves for the greater good that they just don't have any time for kissing or cuddling or anything. But then they saw you and they were just like in love immediately, and they couldn't even fight it. They were just like, this person who has just walked into my life is the person I have sworn my life to protect. Like I don't remember swearing it, but I did. I know I did. Like they saw you and they were like, oh, this is why people fall in love. And so just like right off the bat, they try to get close to you. They really want you to see what they see. They want you to understand where they're coming from. They just really want you to value all the things they're doing, because if you don't value everything they've been doing in the way they do, they're really afraid that they might stop valuing it too. I don't think they would, but I think that's how it feels at first. Like when they first get this feeling, they're like, they could lose themselves in you very easily. And so they really like struggle to make sure that that doesn't happen by like pushing themselves forward and like emphasizing everything they stand for to you. So they might also come across as a little cold to you at first, but like as you two are able to grow close and as they're able to like trust you, you start realizing that like they've loved you from the very beginning. So I think that's probably what I have for you right now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope it was, I'm having a lot of fun with these so far. I hope it was a good experience for you though, and that you are able to come away from it feeling empowered, because I feel like you definitely are, like, you have so much you can bring to the world that you don't know how to actualize. And so I hope that at the very least you're able to like see that in yourself a little bit more now, because you obviously are amazing enough that this person saw you and just immediately, even though they had never let themselves feel that way about someone before, like they saw you and just immediately gave into it because they knew you were worth it. So I hope you know you're worth it. All right, have a good night. Thank you again for all your time and for watching this, and I hope you have a good day. Hey there, Pile 3. This is going to be your reading today, and I told the other piles this, but I do kind of take a peek at the oracle cards that I draw for like the initial picking the pile thing, so that I can write them down. And this is why, because my sleeves are different from the intro video and the lighting is very different, and I am filming this at a different point in time. Also, since I already took a peek at your oracle cards, I feel like this is going to be a really interesting one. You're a very interesting person, Pile 3, and I look forward to seeing what kind of adventures you'll get up to in this little story. So, for starters, I have the Starseed Oracle right here is going to represent kind of how you see our world and like the themes you see our world as having, and then this card will represent this new world that you're going to be thrust into and the themes behind that you'll be dealing with, and then this card will represent you. So we're just going to get started right off the bat. If you end up resonating with that, then this is your pile. If you don't, then if you want to pick another pile, you can, or if you just decide you don't want to do this, that's fine too. But for right now, let's go ahead and get started with the way you see our world. As the Star Family card is sort of all about having that connection and support from other people. So I think you see our world in terms of like, we're all here to give what we can to the world and to do our best and to support each other. And like, you see this world as very community oriented. So you might have grown up with a family that was very, very tight knit, or you might have grown up wanting to have that kind of tight knit connection, but you really idealize humanity's ability to work together, basically. And I think it probably goes a bit further than it does for most people. Like, most people will be like, yeah, I mean, it's good when people can get along and teamwork is important, but you're just like, teamwork is why humanity exists. It's why humanity has gotten as far as it can, and it's as far as it has, and it's amazing. And so you always have this drive to give 100% of what you've got to everyone around you all the time. And because, again, I did take a peek at this card, and I'll get into it when I turn it over for you. I feel like you have a lot to give. Like, you never seem to get exhausted. You just, your potential to the people around you, your constant ability to give is just unlimited, and they are swept away by you. That's a play on words. Well, it's not really a play on words, but that's a word selection that's going to be very applicable anyway, I'm sorry. And so this new world that you're entering here and getting trapped in, because that's the genre convention, of course you are not bound by this reading in any way. You're not really literally being trapped in this other world, but the energy of this world is completely the opposite of this. This is all about like how connected and like pro-social our world is, but this other world, like, it's probably in the middle of some sort of war. It's like nobody trusts anyone. It's very dangerous to you. You go to this new world and you're like, man, not only am I stuck here, but it's a nightmare. Like, this is a horrible place to be stuck. Everyone's starving, nobody works together, everyone, like, if you try to work with someone, they'll stab you in the back, or at the very least they'll argue with you every step of the way, like, oh my god, it's exhausting. And so you're going from this world where everyone works together and we can do anything we want to if we set our minds to it because people have our back. Also, by the way, the lighting changed it, but this candle is lit. I just want you to know that. I don't have it just sitting there. But like, this new world is not like that. Not like that. And if you were to put it into terms of like what it feels like in like real world terms, it would be kind of like if you were like, you grew up in this really close-knit town and then you went away to college and it was like a really super competitive college like Harvard or something, and like suddenly you couldn't rely on anyone. But like, because we're dealing with a fantasy world and fantasy tropes, it's worse than that. Like, you get to this new world and you're just like, how am I supposed to survive this? Nobody, like, even when you get to this new world, everyone's still impressed by you because you're being represented here by the wave, and intensity and like how much force there is. Just like, you probably have a really intense gaze when you say something, people listen. You don't know why they listen, but they do. And you just like have this power that you come into things with. And so like, even in this new world where everyone is like at each other's throats and it's like eat or be eaten and survival of the fittest, etc., like all this like hyper competitive stuff, you still like have respect from day one. Like, people are still, they treat you with a certain amount of like, oh, you know what you're talking about. You don't know anything about our world, but you know what you're talking about. And so like, you have this automatic authority with people in this new world. And so like, even though it's like kind of this awful nightmarish hellscape, you still are pretty okay right off the bat. I think you get to this new world and you're like able to handle it, but like, it doesn't feel good. It feels like the opposite of everything you've ever known. And I feel like when you get to this new world, you're just like, I don't understand the point of this. I don't understand what there is about this world that could be worth anything. You're kind of just like, everyone here is a monster. So let's take a look at how you get to this world in the first place. Like, what exactly puts you here? And it's the sun in reverse. So with the major arcana, I think it's probably like something that legitimately is just like completely out of the blue. One of the other piles so far had a major arcana for how they got to this world. It was also reversed. And it was sort of like a magical world thing. And I think with another major arcana, you like literally are just like walking along and then the world just decides, oh, hey, you're not in that world anymore. You're in this world. And it's sort of like, maybe with the sun, there's like some sort of celebration going on. Like, you're in this, you're like the center of attention. You're the focal point of some sort of celebration of some sort. Like, could be a birthday party. It could be like something celebrating an accomplishment that you made. It could be any number of things like that. But you're like the center of attention, and then you're suddenly gone. Like, you know, in Lord of the Rings, how Bilbo Baggins has that birthday speech, and then just in the middle of it, he puts on the ring and disappears, and everyone's like, oh my god! It's sort of like that, except you don't have control over it. You just kind of are like there one moment, and then the next moment you are not there. And you're like, what even just happened? What is going on? And so the next cards I have are about why you're stuck in this world, like why you can't just leave. So let's see here. We have the Hermit in reverse and the Four of Pentacles in reverse and the Mother of Pentacles also in reverse. Wonder if maybe someone gets a hold of you and just like, for some reason or another, they have power over you. Like, maybe you end up apprenticed to some sort of like really awful witch who just is like, I could use a hand around my witchcrafty cottage, and you are going to help me with my garden. And then you go to the garden, and it's like all these poisonous plants and stuff. And so you're just like, why am I even here? I do feel with a lot of pentacles here that you are being put to work on some level. And with the Hermit in reverse, I think it's people. We have a Hermit in reverse and the Queen of Pentacles, effectively. So I think you're being kept in this world by people. Maybe it's like some sort of interdimensional space raiders catch you and then like auction you off to some sort of horrible establishment where you're expected to like keep the status quo running, and you're like, I don't want to be here. I don't want anything to do with this. Man, I had a thought and then it went away. But like, I definitely feel like with the Mother of Pentacles here in reverse, you don't really like the people who have authority over you. And I definitely think that you are not there willingly. You're not there because you want to help. You're not there because you're like, man, if only they understood what my world was like and how peaceful things could be if people work together. You're on the defensive pretty much from the get-go. Like, you're yoinked out of your world where you're happy and into this nightmare world where everything sucks. And people just have you trapped there. People are like, no, you're gonna help us out. You're gonna make us lots of money, and we're gonna just chill over here in the shade. We're not gonna do anything. I do think there might be a lot that you can learn from these people, and they sort of like promise this knowledge to you because with the Hermit being kind of focused on knowledge and the Queen of Pentacles being kind of like just jumping into my head as like a witchy sort of figure. Like, I feel like there's a lot of knowledge that you could theoretically acquire through these circumstances, but you don't really see them as learning circumstances. You're pretty sure that's a con. And so, And the next card is how you can eventually return to your own world. It's not going to happen immediately, but eventually you can return to your own world through this card, which is the Nine of Pentacles. And so I definitely do think, like, this is sort of an establishment. You're not, like, enslaved. You have potential that someone is trying to bring out of you. And you're not really seeing how their methods are going to work, but once you're able to learn what you're here to learn, and once you have that potential, you're going to have a lot more routes open up, including probably the path back home. And I think one of the things that you might be afraid of is like that if you eventually do make it back to this one, to this Star Family card, this peaceful home life, you're kind of afraid that you're not going to belong to it anymore. Like, you're kind of afraid that this world is going to change you and make you harder because you already have this uncommon intensity. Like, when you think of peace and like peaceful cooperation, you don't normally find things like amping up. You don't normally find intensity. You normally come across people who are like very laid back or very chill. And so I feel like you've always felt kind of at odds with this like really peaceful environment that you grew up in. You always felt like your emotions were too strong, that you were too much, that you couldn't ever tone yourself down enough. And so there's a part of you that like resonates with this world. Like, there's a part of you that sees this like conflict-driven world as a place where like you don't have to hold back anymore. And you're really afraid of letting that like wild side, that intensity, come out completely because you're afraid that if it does, you won't be able to put it back in this box. And so this world is really a place for you to learn to step into your own power, not in the sense of gaining authority over other people, but in the sense of like being comfortable with yourself and the authority that you already tend to like inspire in people. Like, people already give you authority over them without you even having to do anything, but you're uncomfortable with that. And so this world is sort of a world that exists to test that like it exists to sort of tear that box open. Like, you're right, you're not going to be able to put all of this wildness back into a box after you're done. You're not going to be able to put all of the intensity that you've been holding back. You're not going to be able to keep only putting it to these worthy causes. You're going to have some of that intensity for like living your life full of passion, because you are a very passionate person. And I'm sorry that you've existed in a world for so long that's told you that that passion is the same thing as aggression or the same thing as anger, because it's not. Sometimes we just feel things very strongly, and those emotions remind us how full of worth life is. And you've been trying to make this intensity, you've been trying to fit this intensity into a wave that doesn't, like, because waves are made of water and they're liquid and you can mold them, and you've been trying to mold this into something that cuts you off. And you've thought that was a worthy sacrifice, because everyone's making sacrifices. But there are sacrifices you can make that don't involve strangling your heart. So this world is really about pushing you to accept that intensity. And it's doing that basically by putting you in a situation where you don't have to be nice. Like, these people are all kind of nasty to you, and so you don't feel the same need to like pull your punches with them that you do with other people. I definitely think that it's in this world, you end up in this world because you've been chosen for something that's supposed to be great, and I think eventually it can be great. Because the Four of Pentacles in reverse is about generosity, and the Nine of Pentacles is obviously about luxury and being able to stand in your own self without fear of instability or consequences. But with the Hermit in reverse and the Queen of Pentacles in reverse, you don't like these people very much to start with. You're just kind of stuck with this bunch of people who make you angry. And I think you've actually been sitting on that anger for a really long, long time. It's been a long time coming. So, if you're in a new world, you might as well explore a little bit. So I'm going to pull some cards for a little bit more details on this very hostile environment that you found yourself in. So we have the Moon in reverse. Interesting. The Four of Swords in reverse. Yeah. And the Emperor. Okay, so with the Moon card here, I definitely am getting this vibe of like this constant darkness. So you might be in a world that's very like has very long nights. It's very cold. It's sort of maybe more in the Arctic Circle kind of environment of things that we have here. Like, this world is sort of like that, where it's like very far north or south or something, and so like the nights can be very, very long. And when the nights are not long, they're going to be very, very short. But for right now, when you arrive there, they're very long, and it feels like they never end. And people can never really rest easy, because there is some sort of war brewing with this card and the Four of Swords in reverse. I feel like there is sort of like this constant tension of some sort of fight about to break out. And I think that has to do with the Emperor here. So like there's some political tension going on that doesn't really touch you. It doesn't really touch your environment. It just sort of is in the background. Like, the news is generally like, and the Emperor today is thinking about doing this thing, but that might piss off this other nation, and they are ready to tear into our own. And then like later on, fights break out between people who aren't sufficiently loyal enough to the Empire and people who are, and it's just like this sense of like constantly, like, you're secluded from all of this battle, but there's this constant feeling that there's like something is going to happen. You're just like on the verge of this explosion of violence, and it's because like there's not a whole lot of resources to go around. Everyone is already kind of struggling to make ends meet, and then like on top of this, there's like this political unrest. So that's the vibe I'm getting from the world. So I'm going to recap really quick, because that way I I just recapped for the other two, so I'm going to recap really quick here too. But I feel like you've probably been paying pretty close attention to this, or if you haven't been paying close attention, like you still got the idea, I guess. But basically what I'm getting is that you are in this peaceful world at first. You see your world, the world around you is very peaceful, but you don't really fit in because you're just a little bit too much for everyone around you. You're just a little bit too intense, a little bit too direct, a little bit too straightforward. And so you've worked really hard to overcome that and to pour all of your intensity into things that like make you feel good about yourself and into believing in the world around you. But you're suddenly like chosen and kidnapped effectively from this peaceful world into a world that is full of strife and conflict, and you're put in some sort of environment where you are told you're going to learn how to control this like power that you have inside of you, but you see the people around you and they're all kind of like nasty, and you're like, I don't want to be like them. And so you keep having like these conflicts with authority in this new world and trying to like hold on to this idealization of your old world without being able to open your heart fully to this new world. And this new world itself is like cold and dark and full of this brewing political unrest that has everyone at each other's throats, and you just keep seeing the worst in it. And so amidst all of this darkness, there is someone who stands out to you. And that someone, oh yeah, you're this deck, I keep forgetting. And that someone is literally an angel. They might not be like an angel in the sense of like they have wings and they descended from whatever this world's concept of heaven is to, but like they're very sweet. They're probably like a peer here. They're probably someone who's there to learn the same things you are, and they're like the only person who understands why you're so like upset by what you're seeing. Because they're also upset by what they're seeing, but they don't have that same intensity you have. They're very like calm and sweet and angelic. They always know what to say to make you feel better, and they always see things from like this very kind perspective, and you're just like, who even is this person? How did they manage to survive here for so long? And so they kind of inspire you to keep you on track. Yeah. So this first card is going to be kind of how they see the world around them and like the role they fill in that world. And then this next card is going to be like, so like this card is their version of this card. And then this next card is going to be how they engage with like our world, or how they would engage with our world, or with you a little bit more specifically, because you kind of represent our world to them. And so this is sort of their equivalent of this card. And so, yeah, they're just like the sweetest person you can imagine. And they just kind of remind you of your old world. They remind you of like your home, and they keep you kind of grounded in all the lessons you learned throughout this world. And so you don't really completely lose that part of yourself. And they give you like that emotional safe space to be who you are at your core without like having to put on this tough exterior for everyone around you. Like they're just like so pure, and you want to protect them. Probably I would imagine you really want to keep them safe. Like you're constantly looking out for them. Like I said, they're probably here in this world to learn the same lessons for you, and they probably are from another world as well. Like I imagine a lot of your peers or classmates in this weird little institution are from very different backgrounds and very different worlds. And I wonder why you're all being collected, honestly. Like, I wonder if that will come up in later readings at all. But like, this person, your star-crossed lover here, is not super good at standing up for themselves. And so you feel like you step in and kind of like bodyguard them a lot, I think, and protect them from anyone trying to bully them, make sure that they're eating enough and taking care of themselves. And I think they're probably the only person who sees how vulnerable you are, and so they kind of give back to you in that same way. Like, they know that you're kind of like putting on this tough facade and that you don't actually have as much energy as you keep acting like you do. Like, you have all this drive and ambition to like make the world a better place, and they see that and they recognize it, but they also recognize that it's not as unlimited as people tend to think it is. I think they are probably one of the few people around you who don't automatically give you this like authority over them. Maybe they did it first, but then like they start seeing through you really fast and they start being like, actually, I need to be a little stronger too in order to meet you where you are, rather than just like letting you take control over things, because I don't think that's fair to you. And so like they just like, they see your weaknesses and they wrap those weaknesses in a little blanket and they tell you everything's going to be okay. And it just does kind of make you homesick, I think. So this last card I have is going to be sort of what their first impression of you is. And I think in contrast, because I just peeked at it, so the deck is a Soul Connection deck, and I really like this deck because it's very aesthetic, but I just peeked at the card, and I knew eventually I was going to get one of these cards for their first impression, and so I just want to remind you that it is their first impression, and this is the beginning of the story, because they want you to let go of them pretty much right away. So I think they see, with like Lemuria here, and this being memories and sound healing, and Lady Nada being emotional healing and love, I think they see your intensity and they accept it, but they also recognize that you might be using them to sort of avoid facing the real issues and sort of cling on to this like old lifestyle habit that you used to have. And so they're like, don't do that. I can't be friends with you if you're going to use me as a way of holding yourself back. I can't be holding you back from being who you are. And I think there is a certain amount of tension. There's going to eventually be like an actual chapter that deals with like, what did I call it? Because I outlined this a little bit. There's going to eventually be a chapter for this series that's like the prophecy and separation, I guess. And so it's sort of about like your calling and how that keeps you apart from your star-crossed lover. And like, I think this starts being like, in this world, you become aware of it a lot sooner because your star-crossed lover is already aware of it. They're aware of it because they have this sensitivity to they're just very sensitive and insightful, and so they have this awareness of what you need versus what you want, and they're like, you want me, but you don't need me, and rather than that, you need to learn how to be comfortable with all of your rough edges, and you're using me as a way of avoiding dealing with that, because with this person, if you stand up for them and like get some bullies off their case or something, then like you have justification for that anger, even though that anger wasn't necessarily just about the bullies or just about them. And so they really urge you to kind of stay away from them and not use them that way. And I think there's this really strong draw between the two of you because they want to be there for you, they want to be able to help you, and at the same time though, they don't want you to be dependent on them. And I feel like when you just get to this world, like they're the only thing that reminds you of home, they're the only thing that's familiar, they're the only thing that makes you feel like, oh my god, something makes sense. And so you're really drawn to them, but like at the same time, you're an intense person and you've never learned how to deal with that intensity just for the sake of existing in that intensity. You've always channeled it into some other purpose. And so when you meet this person, they're so nice and they're so sweet, but they also can't let you be close to them yet because you need to face that power that you have. You can't be holding yourself back constantly and living your life as though everyone around you is made of glass. And they recognize that, and so they want you to let go of them pretty much right off the bat because they don't want you to see them as a way of perpetuating this old mindset, because you're really in this world to transform and reclaim your power and reacquaint yourself with who you are and like this like natural authority that you have inside, and so just right off the bat they can't be with you. I'm sorry. But this is just the first chapter, and so we'll see how things turn out over time, because they really want to be able to be there for you. They know you're going through a lot, and that they might be the opposite of what you actually need right now. So when you're able to be together, they will definitely want to be with you. Is what I'm getting. So that's what I have for you today. I'm hoping you'll stick around for the next one, because your story seems very, very interesting, and you seem like a very interesting person specifically. But yeah, thank you for sharing your time and energy with me. I hope you have a fantastic day or night wherever you are, and I hope you will join us for the next one. Thank you. Good evening, pile 4. I said evening. It's not even evening where I am. Hello, pile 4. This will be your reading. So sorry about the cough. I just finished the pile before that. I have no stamina, so I can do like half an hour of talking and then my throat starts getting sore. But here is your pile. And so to start with, I'm going to do these 3 cards, and then this represents the world that, like, how you see our world, how you'll see the world that you're entering, and then you. And this is just sort of, it's a thing that Esoterra does, and that I picked up, and I think it's a really nice way of sort of checking in with like the basic situation and seeing if you resonate with that first, and then if you don't, you can either pick another pile or you can go do something else with your time, whatever works out for you. But that way you don't get to the end of the reading and you're like, man, nothing with that was engaging for me. And yeah, I guess there's not really as much pressure to make sure that you have the right situation for this series, because it is sort of like this fantasy scape, and so it's really not as urgent for it to be real. But you know, certain stories will resonate with certain people, so we'll see what you think of it, I guess. And I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. I don't know why, but like for each of these piles I've been really hesitant of like the getting started process. Like turning over that first card has been really difficult. So this is the first card you have, Hiraeth. I don't know if I'm saying that properly. I've studied Welsh a little bit, and purportedly this is a Welsh word, but I'm not super good at pronouncing things. I can't even pronounce English, to be honest. So this card talks about being homesick and not really feeling like you belong, like it's the quintessential starseed experience, basically. So I feel like you always feel a little bit alienated by our world. You always feel like a little bit liminal, or like you don't really quite belong. And so you've already kind of have a tendency to sort of dive into other worlds as like a way of escaping this reality, or like not really dealing with it because you don't really connect to other people, and you kind of wish you could. Like I have another pile earlier, pile 2 had a sort of a similar feeling of like wanting to escape this world to begin with. But for you, for them it was more about not finding anything worthwhile. But for you, you know how valuable everything in this world is. You just don't feel like you can be a part of it. And you don't feel like you belong to it, and it hurts. Like it cuts your heart really deeply, and you just feel like you just really want to find somewhere where you do belong. You want to find somewhere that like feels familiar, because nothing around you ever feels like home. And it might be that like when you were really young you had like this impression of what home felt like, but then something happened and you got like moved around a lot, or you've never really been able to put down roots, and you've never really had like that layer of building an identity in like through going through school, and then like having your school friends, and then like going to like, you know, it's just you've never been able to have that sense of identity attached to like the places around you. You've always had to build that identity based off of like what you can do or how you see things. Like you've really had to create an identity that is independent of like a community. And that's pretty admirable. Like I want to stop there and be like that's honestly really good for you to have that sense of identity that doesn't depend on other people, but it is pretty lonely. And so what you're missing most about our world is like an ability to connect to people. I feel like when you do get in relationships, you tend to put too much of yourself on the table too fast, and sometimes it chases people away right then, but other times you just end up giving someone all these weapons to hurt you with, and it doesn't really work out because you're not good at pacing yourself because you're so desperate for that connection. And so you might have also kind of given up on romance in general. I don't know why I just said that. That might have been a little personal, I'm sorry. So the world that you're going to, the world that you're going to get stuck in, and you might not feel super stuck in it at first, is You Got the Love, which is all about connection. And so it's sort of like maybe you're going to like your home world, or maybe you're going to like somewhere where people see things through the same lens you see things, and you're just like, finally something just sort of clicks and you're like, finally, this is where I belong. This is the way it should have been the whole time. Why was it never like that back home? Why was it never like that when I was growing up? You just like you find somewhere where you have this connection and you're like, so this is what I've been missing. And you don't want to leave it behind. You don't want to come back to our world. We'll get a little bit more into like why you're trapped in this world, because that is the genre, is being trapped in another world. But it doesn't really feel like a trap to you. Of course, the downside of this card is that it is about like codependency and a need for boundaries. And so like you get to this world and you connect on such a deep level that it's really hard to separate yourself from it. Like you forget about our world as fast as possible. You're like, done, I'm never going back. But like all of this identity that you've created about yourself without needing people just kind of can get washed away very easily as well. And so we're going to look at you yourself is Not a Street Lamp, clarity. And so yeah, you've depended on yourself a lot, like in how you see the world and in finding your own truth. You've only had yourself to rely on for such a long time. Like when you get to this other world, you're just like, oh my god, finally I don't have to rely on myself. And you're almost willing to like let yourself buy into this other world completely without like any regard for how you see yourself. But like that little inner voice never quite goes away. So even though there's a part of you that just really wants to succumb to this world completely and go along with it, there's a part of you, and maybe it's really quiet at first, but the longer you ignore it, the louder it gets, that's like, actually, this isn't true to myself any more than that last world was. And so like, even though you finally have that connection that you've always craved, you know you need to be able to take a step back and say, I want to be a part of this, but I don't want it to be my whole identity. I want to exist on my own as well. And so that does kind of prompt you to sort of see the way you exist in our world in a different light, and the way you exist like on Earth in a different light. Once you've experienced this connection, you sort of understand, because this card talks about your soul choosing to be on Earth and having to remember that. And so once you do experience this world, you start to understand why you might have chose to incarnate on Earth on a soul level, which I think makes sense for you. Like that's sort of something that you understand, because you do understand a lot about the world that other people tend to find confusing. So you already have like this really strongly developed spiritual insight into the world. Like you see the world in terms of purpose and understanding like how you've chosen to engage with the world around you, how you've chosen to incarnate here, how you've chosen to live the life you're living. Like you're aware of your own agency in a way that other people tend to deliberately obscure. And I think that takes a lot of courage. So you are a very brave person, but also it takes a lot of strength, because even if you know that you are the one choosing to go through things, Being able to actually take control of that is a whole other journey. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at what causes you to be transported to this world. And we have the Ace of Coins in reverse. So the Ace of Coins is kind of like, it's not necessarily related to the Wheel of Fortune, but it kind of reminds me of the Wheel of Fortune, because the Wheel of Fortune is all about like fortune and misfortune, and the Ace of Coins also speaks of like a sudden good fortune or sudden good health, or like something happens that's just like a lump sum of money that falling into your lap, and you're like, man, I have stuff now. And so in reverse, it sort of seems like maybe something bad happens that causes you to retreat to this world. Like something awful happens and you're given a choice to either continue on in this world or to go to a new world, and you choose to go to a new world. So I see this following on the heels of something that you just don't want to face. You don't want to talk about. You don't want to deal with it. You just want to focus on the good things. You want to focus on like this love and light kind of perspective for a while. I don't think you've ever kind of given in to the need for a love and light perspective, but like at this point in time, you lose something really important to you, and you just kind of, you can't deal with it anymore. You just need to have somewhere else to go. And so then you have this option, and I think you do choose to go to this world based on a sense of loss, but also because it's finally opened up. Like you've been feeling a sense of loss since you got here into our world, and so this was just sort of like the tipping point, and you finally see yourself as needing to just find somewhere new. And so you do. You just leave behind everything and kind of go in with like nothing but the shirt on your back. I don't know how many people read Border Town or like Welcome to Border Town. It's an anthology series started by Terry Windling back in the, I don't know if I said that, was it Windling or Windling? Back in like the 80s, and it's sort of like the main concept of Border Town is that it's like this town that exists kind of like nudged between the world of fairy and like our world, and it's a town that like kids run away to basically. And I kind of get that sense of like maybe you've always known about this other world and you've always been able to go there if you really wanted to, but you've been trying to tough it out and trying to like live in our world, but now you're just like, I'm going now. I'm running away. So you might find Border Town very interesting if you like to read, but or if you've read it already, you might like find that familiar. So you chose this other world though. Like you were given the option and you decided you were gonna go there, and that's how you end up there. But then you do end up stuck. So the next three cards are going to be kind of about how you end up stuck there, because again, genre convention, you're not actually stuck in this world. At any time you can choose to disengage with this whole like narrative, because it is a fantasy story being told with tarot cards, not like an actual trap, okay? I just really want to like emphasize that. So why you're stuck in this other world is the Six of Wands in reverse and the High Priestess and the Queen of Coins in reverse. So with the Six of Wands, I get the sense that you like I was originally picking up on with the Ace of Coins, you definitely are running away to this other world. You're not being taken there, you're not creating it, you're not going there purposefully. You're going there because you don't have anywhere else to go. And you don't feel like you belong anywhere, so you just like, there's like this sense of being really down on your luck. But when you get to this other world, like all of the clarity that you found before, like within yourself, you start being able to utilize. Like maybe you start being able to use these intuitive powers that you've always known you had, but you weren't able to like really put into practice. Maybe you are able to step into like your power in a way that you've never been able to before. It's always been there, but now you're able to sort of awaken it. And you might feel like you go through a spiritual awakening here, or take on some sort of very spiritual role. So you do have like responsibilities that you take up in this new world, and they make you feel powerful, and you've never really had that feeling of power or belonging before, and so it's sort of difficult to dissuade yourself from it. But with the Queen of Coins in reverse over here, I do think there is a person who is a bit reluctant to allow you to leave. And they might not be very overt about it, because the Queen of Coins isn't very like in your face or aggressive. But they are kind of like, you're like, okay, maybe I should get going now, and they're like, no, just stay for another night. We have all this abundance for you. It's so good here. Just stay for a little bit longer. And you're like, well, one more night couldn't hurt. And so you just kind of like stay there. And it feels good. It just feels good to be taken care of. But your spirit isn't healing the way it should heal, I think, in this other world. Your spirit is sort of like that little voice in your heart, that tells you like what is good for you and what isn't good for you, is sort of a little wary of this. And so even though it's so tempting, you do kind of sometimes start getting this feeling like maybe I should go. And so the way that you're eventually going to be able to leave this world is the next card. And like, that isn't right now. You're not necessarily leaving this world yet, but when you are able to leave this world, what it's going to be caused by is the Three of Coins in reverse. And so with the Queen of Coins in reverse and you've got the Love card, I feel like being able to separate yourself from other people again, especially because you worked so hard to be able to connect with people, it's going to be difficult. I think that's why this card is in reverse. But being able to separate yourself from other people again, even though you spent so much time trying to connect with them in the first place and trying to find that belonging, being able to separate yourself from it again, willfully and consciously, is sort of what it's going to take to get yourself out of this world and back into our world. And you're not necessarily there yet, and that you don't need to be. We have other stories planned for this story series, but that's what'll eventually free you from this world, is the ability to purposefully disconnect from people and set those boundaries and purposefully say, this is the boundaries of where I exist, and I will carve my own space out for myself to belong, I guess, is sort of what's coming to me. Like this sense of like not needing other people to let you into their space in order to have a place where you belong, but creating your own home around you that you build yourself. And the next three cards are, since we are going to another world, I feel like a little bit of exploration is nice. And so we have, the next three cards are just a little bit more about this world over here that you have come into. And we have the Hierophant, the Nine of Wands, and the Two of Swords. So I'm definitely picking up on this world being kind of like cozy, and like when you go to it, you're really only in like one very, very small area of it, because I feel like there's like one significant person in this world who is there kind of coaching you, kind of taking care of you, and like, because the Nine of Wands here is represented by, or is representing, I don't know. The story associated with the Nine of Wands for this deck is Vasilisa the Brave, and that's all about like she goes to Baba Yaga and starts staying with Baba Yaga for a while. And then the Hierophant is being represented by the Buffalo Woman. And so there's like, again, this figure that represents this sense of plenty and having all this nurturing ability who is stepping in and nurturing you and taking care of you. So you might find yourself in like, and with the high priestess as well, you might find yourself in sort of like a religious institute where you are like helping to take care of people's spiritual needs, and sort of like encouraging them to become stronger. But you yourself, your spiritual needs are also in need of attention. And so like you're in like maybe like a house of healing is sort of what's coming to mind. Like this other world is sort of like one of those places where it's like, it's not really a world in the sense of having like this huge geography, but it's like this kind of magic house or something where you're like, the Thief of Time comes to mind by Clive Barker, where you have like this magic house, and at first it seems amazing and grand and everything, but then it turns out it's eating people. Spoilers. But I mean, it's not really eating people, but like it's consuming their time, I guess. So like you have this house and it's meant to provide plenty, but the more you observe it, the more you see what it's doing, the more you kind of start doubting how much good it's actually doing the people around you. And you start thinking like, maybe I should step back a little bit. And every time you try to step back, there's this other person there who's like, no, stay a little longer. Let us take care of you. And so it's like kind of difficult for you to be like, no, I need to go, because you've spent so long not being taken care of that it's really hard to resist just being taken care of, regardless of what it costs you. But yeah, that's the world that you're finding yourself in. So just to recap, because I recapped for the other piles, and this is just because sometimes I can get a little all over the place. So you exist in our world feeling like you don't really belong, and that's caused you to develop a very fine-tuned sense of like who you are without other people defining you. And that's like something you've always been proud of yourself for, but it's also been very, very lonely. And so you eventually reach your limit. Like you've lost enough in the world, and so you run away to this other amazing world where like you can just be taken care of and belong without having to worry about how much you connect with people. And you kind of start losing yourself a little bit in that world. And that's because there's things about yourself that you don't want to face. There's things like insecurities and pains and shadows that you don't want to really deal with. And so you just kind of like let this other person, this person who's like running this other world, take care of you. And like start really leaning into this like spiritual side of things without necessarily taking care of yourself completely. And you're able to provide these spiritual services for other people as well. And sort of as you observe them, you start realizing that this other world that you've stepped into might kind of cause codependency a little bit. It might cause people to stop thinking for themselves, and it might cause people to start only doing what this ruler of the other world thinks they should do. And so you start realizing how important it is to be able to set boundaries, and also why you might have been in our world with so many boundaries. And so now we're going to get a glimpse of your star-crossed lover, because I did promise a romance in the title of this video. And for here we have not a mountain, stability. And then the next two cards that I'm going to draw are basically their version of this card and this card respectively. So this card is sort of like how they see the world around them and their role in it. And the next card is how they see our reality and like where you come from. But first I want to look at this card a little bit. I definitely see them as someone very reliable. It might even be this person who is constantly nurturing you. They're very powerful, and they're very sturdy, and they very, very much provide for you. in a way that you've never been provided for before. And so they see themselves as being, or the role that they perform as being that powerful, and maybe granting people's wishes or allowing people to have things that they could never have before. Like, I'm kind of thinking of, I keep referencing pop cultural things for you, and I hope that's because you're like keeping up to date with pop cultural stuff, but like I've been watching Lucifer recently, and so they kind of have like a Luciferian edge to them, where they're like, yes, I can give you what you desire. It does cost something in return, so you have to be a little bit cunning about it, but I can make it happen. I can give you what you want. So like they can grant people's wishes, or they can seem like they're granting people's wishes at the very least. They have some strange powers that they're able to apply. I'm also thinking of this one horror manga that I read like 1,000 years ago, where you have like this dream eater, I guess, living in a tea shop, and like it's just like installments of people coming to him to take care of their nightmares, and every time they do that, he like ends up eating a bit of their memories as well alongside the nightmares, so they can forget things like, oh yeah, she totally killed her husband, but now she doesn't have to remember that she killed her husband, or something like that. I don't really remember it very well, but one of these days I'll read it again, probably. Maybe, if I can find it. But like, it's kind of that sort of feeling of like, or like Ursula from The Little Mermaid. Like, people come in to have their wishes granted, but if they're not careful, that can really mess things up for them. And you're kind of like this person's assistant. So I definitely think it is this person who keeps urging you to stay, because they see you as really powerful as well. Like, we have Doctors from Other Galaxies, New Perception. They really like how you see the world. They really think that you have this interesting perspective that gives them more insight into other people, and they think that you have something unique to offer to their like little establishment here. They think that you provide something that no one else could provide. So they're very eager to keep you happy. They're very eager to keep you like in on the establishment. They make sure that you're compensated. They're not taking advantage of you in like the normal way. There might be some things where you're a little uncomfortable, because we do have a lot of like boundaries being really important, and sort of like this war between being connected to someone and being true to yourself going on here. Like, thematically speaking, you are struggling with boundaries, but they aren't actively malicious toward you. They're legitimately not trying to take advantage of you. They just maybe struggle with boundaries a little bit too. But they do see you as their equal in a way that other people tend not to. Like, other people kind of tend to hold you apart, but they see you as a kindred spirit right off the bat. And they are very eager to keep you close. And so for their first impression, ooh, this is interesting. So this is the Soul Connection deck by Saint Soleil, and I think it's a very pretty message card deck. But their first impression of you is, I tried to run from our love, but our souls crave this magic. So I feel like they've been a part of your life before. And back then, they weren't really able to accept you the way you wanted to be accepted, and so they left. But then when things went down, they kind of approached you with an offer and took you to this other world where they're doing what seems to be very good work. They're doing things that like really do seem to make a difference. And now that they've gone through all of this, like, I can't be with you because this is too much, they're really eager to show you how much they've changed. But like, again, the way you get out of this world, the way you start realizing how to return to our world, is by learning how to listen to that inner voice even when you're getting everything you want, listening to that inner voice, and setting boundaries. So I don't know how trustworthy your star-crossed lover is. They seem like a lot to kind of sort through. But I also think you're exactly the kind of person who can see through them. So, I think that's about what I have for you. I'm really interested to see how this will play out in future installments. I haven't been asking people to comment at the end of these readings because I just kind of figure if you want to comment, you will. But I'm really curious about what's going on here. And I hope that whatever you're getting out of this reading is helpful. So that's about all I have for you. I hope you have a lovely day or night wherever you are. Thank you for sharing your energy and time with me, and I hope to see you in the next installment.